Operation has resulted in the discovery of 20 million rand worth of cocaine on a small holding in Midrand in Gauteng. The cocaine was found hidden in a storage room on an identified plot. A 56-year-old man who is believed to be the owner of the plot has been arrested, and the cocaine, weighing about 80 kilograms, has been seized. South African Police Service spokesperson Brigadier Atlenda Mate has more on this.
Imagine police tearing open a storage room on a quiet Midrand plot and finding bricks of pure cocaine stacked like a hidden fortune worth R20 million. Discovered in the kind of silence that makes every breath feel heavier than the last as officers realize they've just stumbled into something far bigger than a single stash. And as the dust settled around that shocking discovery, one question rose louder than every whispered suspicion. Who was the quiet 56-year-old man standing behind those doors? And why was he the one holding the key to a consignment powerful enough to shift the drug trade across an entire region? Because nothing about this case is simple, and the secrecy wrapped around that cocaine suggests a journey that crossed borders, passed through hidden hands, and was headed straight for Cape Town with a purpose no one has fully explained. Today, we uncover how intelligence officers followed the trail, how they connected the dots to that isolated property, and how a single raid exposed layers of a criminal pipeline that few people ever see. Every movement that led to this moment tells a story, every decision reveals a clue, and every unanswered question pulls us deeper into a world where silence protects the powerful and fear keeps the truth buried. Stay with me, because in the next 3 hours we unravel the entire case from the first spark of suspicion to the final arrest, laying bare every detail that brought this multi-million rand operation to its knees. And before we dig into the darkness behind this discovery, hit subscribe, because what you're about to hear changes everything. Blue Hills in Midrand is the kind of place where people expect calm days, quiet nights, and wide-open plots that feel far removed from the noise of Johannesburg. Yet this same tranquility helped hide movements that would later shock an entire country. The area sits between expensive estates and stretches of rural farmland, creating a mix of wealth, privacy, and space that makes unusual activity easy to overlook. It is here, on a seemingly ordinary piece of land, that investigators would eventually uncover evidence of a drug pipeline powerful enough to change the course of a national investigation. On October 28, 2025, long before the raid made headlines, teams inside crime intelligence began noticing unusual reports connected to this quiet community, and those early hints created a sense of curiosity that slowly grew into deep concern. Officers believed a drug consignment had recently crossed into South Africa from a neighbouring country, but they still had no clear idea where it was stored or who was protecting it. As suspicion grew, preparations began behind closed doors as investigators quietly worked on securing a warrant and assembling a larger team to approach the unfolding situation with caution. At the center of all this attention was a 56-year-old man whose name the authorities never released. A man who appeared ordinary enough to blend into the background of daily life, while carrying a secret far heavier than anyone around him suspected. Those who encountered him described him as quiet, someone who kept to himself, someone who did not stand out, and that calm exterior made it difficult for people to imagine he was connected to anything illegal. Yet investigators had reason to believe he either owned, lived on, or managed the property, placing him at the heart of a developing mystery. Suspicion first grew when intelligence teams traced certain movements connected to a larger syndicate, and small clues began pointing them toward this one plot in Blue Hills where nothing outwardly seemed wrong. Officers noted patterns that suggested the property was being used as a safe point, a temporary stop for goods likely moved across borders with precision and secrecy. The more they studied these signals, the more they realized the plot was not just a random location but a deliberate choice by those coordinating the mysterious transport chain. As investigators followed each lead, the Blue Hills property slowly transformed from an anonymous address into a focused target, and with every unanswered question, the weight of what they might find grew heavier. Officers knew that something important was hidden behind those locked storage doors, yet they could not know the size, the value, or the danger of what waited inside. By the time the warrant was in place and the teams were ready, a silent expectation hung over the investigation because everyone involved understood that this location held secrets that could reshape everything they thought they knew. Surveillance began quietly as intelligence officers positioned themselves to study the rhythms of the property, and what they saw in those early days made it clear that this was no ordinary home in a peaceful neighborhood. They watched how certain vehicles arrived at strange hours, how engines idled for brief moments before leaving again, and how patterns emerged that did not match the daily routine of a man living a simple life. Every unusual movement formed another small piece of a puzzle that hinted at a deeper operation unfolding behind the closed gates of the Blue Hills plot. As days passed, officers noticed contradictions that complicated their understanding of what was happening, because some locals insisted the man barely interacted with anyone, while others recalled seeing faces they had never seen before coming and going quickly. These small disagreements created uncertainty, yet each conflicting account pushed investigators to look harder at the strange flow of visitors who stayed just long enough to raise suspicion without leaving evidence. Moments that seemed harmless to ordinary people became significant to officers who recognized the behavior of a property being used to hide something far larger than its quiet appearance suggested. Inside the investigative teams, debates grew intense because acting on incomplete intelligence always carried the risk of failure or danger, and everyone knew that a wrong step could compromise months of discreet monitoring. Some officers argued that the clues were enough to justify intervention, while others urged patience to ensure they were not misreading ordinary movements as evidence of organized crime activity. Each discussion added emotional weight, because they were not only deciding how to act but also carrying the responsibility of protecting themselves while chasing a truth no one had fully seen yet. The wait for the legal authorization became its own test of endurance, as teams remained on standby through changing conditions that made the entire situation feel even more unpredictable. Officers were frustrated by every passing hour that kept them from moving forward, especially when they observed a suspicious vehicle leaving the property at the exact moment they felt they might be too late. These moments stirred anxiety among them, because missing even one critical window could allow whoever was involved to shift the hidden goods or disappear without a trace. When the final order arrived, officers prepared themselves for the operation with a seriousness that came from knowing they were stepping into an unknown environment shaped by weeks of uncertainty and clues that only hinted at the truth. They gathered with determination, each person trusting the intelligence that led them to this point while understanding that what lay inside the property might reveal either a small crime or something far more significant. As they approached the gate with cautious coordination and a focus sharpened by tension, the long build-up reached its peak, marking the moment when every unanswered question was about to collide with reality. The moment officers entered the storage room felt like the culmination of every hour spent waiting, because the heavy door revealed a hidden world none of them could fully prepare for. As the darkness gave way to the first narrow beam of light, rows of tightly wrapped blocks appeared, stacked with deliberate care as if guarded by silence for a long time. It became clear instantly that this was no small stash, because the sight of approximately 80 kilograms of cocaine arranged so neatly carried a weight that struck everyone in the room. Once the officers steadied themselves, they began confirming what their instincts already understood, because each package showed the familiar markings and consistency recognized in similar high-level narcotics cases. Field tests were performed quickly, and the substance reacted exactly as expected, forcing immediate radio calls that spread through the team with a mixture of shock and resolve. In that moment, the value of what lay before them, estimated at R20 million, brought a seriousness that reminded everyone how rare it was to intercept a consignment this large before it reached the streets. The suspect's reaction unfolded quietly as officers moved to secure him, because he seemed caught between disbelief and resignation when confronted with the discovery. While some people in such moments argue or panic, he remained still as they explained his rights and placed him in handcuffs, showing either confusion or a deeper understanding of how serious the situation had become. For the officers, the arrest marked not just the end of the raid but the beginning of a heavier responsibility as they realized the magnitude of the network attached to the man standing before them. What made the situation more complex was the intelligence suggesting the cocaine was never meant to stay in Midrand, because investigators had reason to believe the shipment was on its way to Cape Town. This information shifted the entire perspective of the case, since moving drugs inland at this scale usually involved coordination across multiple provinces and individuals who rarely reveal themselves directly. The more the team examined the evidence, the more they understood that this find was only a single link in a chain stretching beyond the boundaries of the Blue Hills property. News of the seizure began spreading quickly across police structures, and senior officials responded with statements that highlighted the importance of stopping such a massive consignment before distribution could begin. It was a moment of pride for law enforcement, yet also a reminder of how deeply organized crime had embedded itself in hidden corners of the country. As officers processed the scene, one thought eventually settled into everyone's mind. Although they had found the cocaine, the true investigation was only starting, because the shipment raised far more questions than it answered. The days after the seizure moved quickly into the formal legal process, because the 56-year-old suspect was brought before the Midrand Magistrates Court to face charges that reflected the seriousness of his situation. Prosecutors prepared accusations involving possession, dealing, and trafficking, and each charge carried a weight that could shape the rest of his life depending on how the case unfolded. Journalists filled the benches while lawyers whispered among themselves, and the possibility of bail or a long remand period became one of the early questions that would determine how the courtroom story progressed. As the legal wheels began turning, investigators shifted their focus to the broader network behind the cocaine, because every haul of this size almost always connected to a larger operation hiding behind ordinary routines. They retraced possible entry routes from neighboring countries and analyzed whether the shipment relied on corrupt systems or concealed transport channels that allowed drugs to cross borders without attracting suspicion. With each theory came a new uncertainty, and it forced detectives to confront the difficult question of whether the suspect was the architect of the plan or simply a middleman caught in the wrong place at the wrong time. While police continued piecing together the supply chain, the community around Blue Hills felt the impact of the discovery in unexpected ways, because the idea that $20 million worth of cocaine sat quietly in a storage room so close to their homes shook their sense of normal life. Some residents felt relief that the drugs were removed, while others struggled with fear as they wondered what kind of people might have been passing through their area without their knowledge. The incident also reignited conversations about drug addiction, organized crime, and the silent dangers hiding behind daily routines that families never suspect. Behind the scenes, officers handled the seized cocaine with strict procedures, because every brick now formed part of a delicate evidence chain that had to remain intact for the court case to stand. Each package was cataloged, sealed, recorded, and transferred to secure storage where it would remain until trial, representing not only evidence but the danger that had been prevented from reaching South African streets. Thinking about how quickly 80 kilograms could have been broken down, distributed, and consumed added a somber weight to the entire operation, reminding everyone what the seizure had truly prevented. Even with the arrest and the recovery of the drugs, many questions continued to hang unresolved, because investigators could not immediately determine whether the suspect had offered a full statement or held back information out of fear or loyalty. Detectives wondered whether additional arrests were coming, or if the true organizers remained safely out of sight while one man took the fall for the entire shipment. As the case moved deeper into the legal system, one truth became clear. The arrest answered only the first layer of the mystery, while the deeper network behind the R20 million consignment remained hidden in the shadows, waiting for the next break in the investigation. In the end, after hours of tracing each layer of this operation, the questions left hanging in the air are more powerful than the answers we uncovered, because every detail of this case hints at a bigger network that still moves quietly behind closed doors. Viewers are left wondering whether the 56-year-old man was truly the one making the decisions or simply the person chosen to stand closest to the danger when the police arrived. And as the investigation continues beyond what we can see, the story invites each person watching to think deeply about the forces shaping the drug routes inside South Africa. So before closing this chapter, it is worth asking the questions that investigators themselves debated behind the scenes, questions that cut through the surface and into the heart of what this seizure reveals. Do you believe the suspect acted alone? Or was he placed in that storage room as a shield for people whose names will never appear in a courtroom? And why would such a valuable consignment, reportedly worth $20 million, be left in the hands of someone who lived such a quiet and uncomplicated life? Another question shaping the conversation is whether this operation exposed a pipeline that stretches far beyond Midrand, possibly reaching into neighboring countries, transport networks, and hidden handlers who prefer to remain invisible. If the cocaine was truly destined for Cape Town, then the journey was far from over, and the arrest only froze a single moment in a much longer chain of movement. Viewers must consider whether this incident represents a victory or merely a glimpse into a world where most decisions are made far away from the people who get arrested. If this investigation opened your eyes or shaped your understanding of how complex drug operations can be, then liking this video helps push it to more people who care about real cases told honestly. Subscribing also ensures that you never miss the next deep dive, because more stories like this are coming, and each one connects to a larger picture of crime, vulnerability, and the systems that hold these networks together. Your engagement is a meaningful part of building a platform that values truth, clarity, and long-form storytelling.